Okay, I'm Colonel Jared Veneta. I'm the commander of DISA Pacific, and it's a pleasure to be back here at TechNet meeting with all of you. Quick show of hands. If you are not a DISA employee, please raise your hand because I'm talking to you. All right. The purpose of this brief is to talk to our industry partners and make sure that you have an understanding, a little DISA 101 real quick, an overview of DISA PAC, and then try to give you a high-level explanation overview of what we are doing in the Pacific Theater and what some of our challenges are so you can better shape your products and what you could possibly deliver both to DISA and the rest of the DoD. There's a do business with DISA slide at the end of my brief. We'll leave that up so you can look at it. And I'll be happy to take any questions for as long as we have the area here before I have to run to the next panel. So if you have questions throughout the brief, feel free to stop me. Okay, thank you. Next slide, please. All right, high-level overview of DISA. Founded in 1960 as Defense Communications Agency, renamed Defense Information Systems Agency in 1995. At its heart, DISA operates and defends the DISA DODN area of operations. That's what we do. I operate and defend the Indo-Pacific Command portion of the DISA DAO. Next slide, please. If you had the opportunity to stop by our booth out front, you can get a copy of the DISA Next Strategy. This picture is embedded in the strategy. This is our agency's high-level overview, our vision for what we're doing over the next few years, the network we're trying to build, the critical infrastructure we're trying to put in place in order to deliver global C2. You see operate and secure DAO DISA. These are our 4 imperatives here. Within that is building that DISA infrastructure that is global and what is our joint force connects into. Support strategic C3. That's what we do. We have Geeks J, we're the program office for that. We enable the commander to see, to sense, and make sense of the battlefield. When we look at a future fight, the commander is not going to be standing within short distance of a battlefield here in the gunfire. The only way they're going to see the battlefield is via our network. That's how they're going to view all of the Pacific, all of the globe, in this high-end global high-tech fight. Optimize the network and unify the network. And the most important bullet under that is divest of tech debt. We have a lot of aging legacy equipment on our network that is not going to work with what we're putting in place now. Our new infrastructure is not going to be backwards compatible with this legacy equipment. In order to do all the high-speed things we want to do in the future, AI, machine learning, to move data, move full motion video around our battlefield, we have to get this legacy equipment off of the network and have more of a high-speed, high-bandwidth environment. And then operationalizing data. Data is the key to the next fight. Service stovepipes, service networks are not the direction we need to be. We need to be able to seamlessly move our data across the battlefield, regardless of the warfighting function, fires, intel, sustainment, whatever it is. Our joint force needs access to that data seamlessly, no matter where they are across the globe. Next slide, please. A brief overview of the org chart. General Stanton is the DISA commander. He also dual hats as the commander Joint Force DODN. So you see him in the middle of the slide there. DISA chain of command goes up through CIO. The DODN chain of command goes up through Cybercom and General Hawk. On the right, all the national command authorities, the services, and the combatant commands that we support, as well as the combat support agencies. So if it has defense or DoD type title in it, it's probably an agency that DISA supports in some way or another. Next slide, please. DISA is a global organization because the DODN, the Department of Defense Information Network, is a global network. We have our Joint Interoperability Test Command, our network operations centers, which are global, our regional field commands and field offices. Each combatant command has either a field office, and then there's 4 field commands. Global covers our, obviously globally for the DODN, and then Europe, PAC, and CENT are doing the regional field commands, the network operations centers, in addition to that combatant command liaison. And then our data centers, 2 in this theater, 1 here in Hawaii, 1 in Japan. And then our contracting office, probably the unsung heroes of the future fight, as we work with all of our telcos across all of Asia, the ability to have a plan, work with a telco, and execute that money quickly is going to be vital. Next slide, please. Okay, and you see in the center of the map here, that is all the undersea cable infrastructure that the bulk of our data across the Pacific rides. You look off to the left, an overview of the Indo-Pacific theater, the number of military personnel by service, and then you see the vast theater and all the partners we work with. If you sat through Admiral Converse's opening keynote today, he talked a lot about the lessons learned from Ukraine, and then said this theater isn't Europe, and while we take a lot of those lessons learned, it is different. And the main difference is we don't have one treaty alliance, NATO, that we all unify behind, and one NATO secret network that we can coordinate off of. You see the 6 treaty allies, multiple partners, varying degrees of capability, and multiple networks that we support. So it's a challenge, it's a large theater, a lot of different partnerships, and not one treaty that we can work with. So while we take what we're learning in Ukraine and apply it where applicable in this theater, we have to understand it is a different fight. It is a different set of challenges out here, and the geography is just one of those challenges. Off to the right, you see an overview of DISA PAC and how we operate across the Pacific. Each one of the flags represents a location where I have a field office. So we have our field office up in Alaska. I share that mission with our DISA NORTHCOM, our Homeland Defense mission. A lot of work with the Army and Air Force and Missile Defense Agency. Our Hawaii field office, which is embedded with the Indo-Pacific J6. Our Guam field office, also a really tight mission with Homeland Defense, as well as power projection from the second island chain. And then Japan, located up in Yokota, working with our forces on mainland Japan. And our Guam field office, as I double back, also covers, besides all the second island chain, of note, they have Philippines and Australia, where we're expanding our presence. Our Japan field office covers down on Singapore and Diego Garcia because it aligns nicely with the Navy's mission and theater. Moving to Korea, our Korea field office just focuses on the peninsula because that's a large mission. And then looking at our Okinawa field office, they also cover down on Taiwan because they're closest in proximity. So a very large theater that a rather small, relatively speaking, workforce covers down on. We do that in partnership with the Joint Force. A lot of capability, a lot of working together to run each one of these critical nodes across the vast Pacific. And of course, we also do it in partnership with industry and all the technology and all the contracts that we have with you. Next slide, please. Look at the DISA leadership, the command deck on the top 2 levels. My staff sections from admin, operations, engineering, and plans on the 3rd tier. And then those field office leadership from Alaska, Hawaii, Japan, Okinawa, Korea, and Guam. Off to the right, our local data center leadership that runs our Yokota and Hawaii data centers, as well as our contracting office lead and our Naval Reserve debt that augments our watch floor. Next slide, please. This is a slide that we use to kind of give the lay of the land for how we operate. If you look down the center of the slide, you see the 10 internet access points that DISA operates globally. 2 of them are in this theater, Hickam and Yokota. To the right of that slide is the operate and defend the DODN. That's my world. That's where we live. Defensive cyber operations, cybersecurity, operating, defend, providing C2 capability to the commander. To the left of that, that's the hunt forward, offensive cyber operations, our cyber national mission force. That's not as much my area of responsibility, but I think as we progress in the future, we're going to see this be a little more free-flowing. actions on one side, impact actions on the other. Expertise on one side needs to be applied to expertise on the other, vice the kind of rigid binning of capabilities that we have in place now. But for now, I live to the right side of this slide on the operate and defend the network. Next slide, please. All right, also up at our main area, you see the DISA PAC vision document. Our priorities and vision way ahead is nested under the DISA Next Strategy. Within that document, you'll see this map. If you look, you see kind of the purplish line. That's our second island chain. The yellow line running it down is our first island chain. Kind of correlates nicely with what the Chinese call the 9-dash line. The yellow dots are our DISA points of presence across the theater. So we'll anchor on this slide a little bit here as we talk about what we're trying to do at a high unclassified level. 80% of our joint force is in the continental United States. So in the event of conflict in this theater, we're going to have to close the distance. Our bandwidth requirements in this theater are going to spike from what they operate on a daily basis. Even during a large exercise, we're going to spike. So having the infrastructure in place before day one of the fight, that's vital right now. We're in the prep time. We know 2027 is our target date. This is what we're trying to build. We are looking for an infrastructure that's ready to go on day one of the fight to absorb the bandwidth increases from that joint force descending on this theater. You also look at this and you see the ocean and the distances that we have to cover. Transport layer is one of our biggest challenges in this theater. We spend our day thinking about two things. Where is our data located? So cloud computing capability, and how do we access that data? Okay, so that's our data centers, both on-prem government ones and commercial that we have through our joint warfighting cloud computing contract. And then what is our transport? And we call it agnostic transport. Undersea cable, terrestrial fiber, military, government, SATCOM, whatever it takes to get that joint force out at the edge to connect back into their data. That is what we're trying to build in this theater. That's the problem set. And when you look at a high level for our joint force, we're doing what we've always done. We're doing combined arms, aircraft, artillery, infantry. The difference nowadays is we are adding space, cyber, and information as part of that fibers package. And instead of deconflicting between one Marine unit and one Army unit located in the desert of Iraq, we're deconflicting globally across combatant commands. It's a global fight, and these are capabilities that are going to span the entire world. So when you look at that requirement, deconflicting all these different types of fires globally amongst combatant commanders, you need a global network. You need a global data-centric network. We need to be able to seamlessly move our data across not just the Indo-Pacific theater, but the globe, because that's where this fight is going to happen. We're going to have multiple combatant commands participating, if not all of them, on any given day. We cannot be burdened by having data stovepiped in a service and not accessible to a unit that needs it. That's the future. Seamless transport, seamless access to data, available at any time, anywhere throughout the world. So you look at that problem set, you look at the resiliency that's required, you look at the ability to move data around, that's where we need help from the industry. And we'll take some questions on the end of the brief here if something I'm saying isn't clear and you need more fidelity. Next slide, please. Throughout the theater, Indo-PACOM executes what they call integrated deterrence. That's our mission right now. Short of conflict, we are in the business of preventing conflict. We prevent conflict by projecting strength. You'll see this throughout the year as Indo-PACOM operates aggressively in the first and second island chain to deter. As we do these deterrence missions, these are a lot of small level exercises, and then there's some large level exercises with our main partners. Each one of these exercises comes with a C2 requirement. So DISA deploys personnel forward during key times of the year when we feel that activity is at its highest, so we can support all these vast C2 requirements from each one of these exercises, and there are many of them. So we time our support requirements up with each one of these Tier 1 and Tier 2 exercises, as well as the small events, like an Army or Marine unit doing a HIMARS insertion, a Taiwan Strait transit by the Navy or one of our joint force components, constructive kills that regularly happen daily on our network, working through the kill chain and how we move that data around the entire theater. This is happening every single day, and it is an intense comm requirement. If you just look at the physics of the problem of a sensor in the first island chain, relaying data back to a decision maker in Guam or even Hawaii, and then that man in the loop making a decision, yes, fire, it has to go back to a firing position in the first island chain, and there has to be low latency on it, because we're not doing what we did the last 20 years, trying to hit troops in the open in the desert. We're trying to hit moving ships. The problem set is much more complex. The requirements on the network are much more demanding than what we've had to deal with in the past. Next slide, please. Okay, you'll see the information up here on how to do business with DISA. This is primarily where you're going to be dealing with DISA headquarters. That's not my role as a regional field command. My job is to help describe the problem to you, tell you who to talk to, and how you can work with us. But this is the information that you'll need to work with the agency. So when you come with your pitch, come with an understanding of the problem and what you and your company, your hardware, your software, your expertise, what you can do to get after part of the problem, all the problem, whatever piece of it you're looking at. Tell us how we benefit from using you. That's, I think, the best way to get your foot in the door and then quickly deliver that capability. So I'm going to leave plenty of time here for questions. I think we have a microphone in the back. Yes, thanks, sir. Okay, so there's one mic there. If you have something, please don't be shy.
Hi, it's Dave Klink with Lighthouse. One of the questions for you is the lessons learned from Ukraine it seemed that almost no amount of resiliency was going to matter. It was also the ability to stand back up. And I think they stood their federal network back up 7 times. They got really, really good at it. But it went from months down to days because they had to do it 7 times. You talked a lot about the resiliency and the protection on the front end. How about the ability to recover? Because that's what we would expect. It's what we saw in Ukraine.
Yeah, that's an interesting question, and I wrestle with it daily. So part of my point about having this robust, reliable, resilient, take all the adjectives we use, network in place prior to day one of the fight is because I don't know if I can get experts like you and your team into the theater when I need to reconstitute the network. If I can, great. I think we'll do exactly what's happening in Ukraine. If not, I think our goal is to have such a resilient network that we can gracefully degrade it as we go through the conflict. Our pipes are going to shrink, but we understand what our bandwidth requirements are. We understand each unit's bandwidth requirements and what is the minimum amount of bandwidth they need for their applications to be an effective warfighting organization. So it's not that I don't think we could do that. It's just sometimes I worry whether we get access into the theater. Okay, so if we can't get access, we can't remotely fix it. We gracefully degrade the network, but continue to provide C2 capability just with a little less bandwidth. But having a more resilient network in place, I think, enables us to take a punch.
Good afternoon, Colonel. The question that I had was associated to the 6 treaty allies and the fact that their networks are a different state of readiness, robustness, survivability, flexibility, blah, 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 right? Is that all part of the mission partner environment, and is DISA doing something to bring them up to speed as we can create a cohesive network like we have with NATO?
Okay, so DISA doesn't own mission partner environment, but while you're out here, I'm going to ask you to talk to the Indo-PACOM J6. Their Indo-PACOM mission network, I think, is answering what you're saying. DISA's role on the Indo-Pacific Mission Network is we are the cybersecurity service provider for IMN. So it's a zero trust environment that federates with all of the disparate coalition networks that we operate across this theater. I think we're going to see DISA play an increased role in that zero trust cybersecurity environment based on General Stanton's recent comments. But that's our role to date. We don't own mission partner environment. The Air Force owns that, but DISA and DISA PAC do CSSP for the Indo-Pacific Mission Network, and they can tell you all about it. Their team that built it is out here. Yes, the Indo-Pacific J6 owns the Indo-Pacific Mission Network. They do. I believe they're right over there in the corner. Yep. Thanks, Rob. What else, folks? Particularly the industry partners. What is it that it confuses you about DISA, or that you don't know, or what I said as far as the scheme of maneuver for the joint force in the theater? What do you need more explanation on? I'm a Marine, so there really are no dumb questions. Don't be shy.
Hey, Colonel Ken
Ken.
Williamson from Oracle. Are you involved in the Joe Cloud expansion that's coming from DoD CIO? You can tell me about that.
Yeah, thanks for the softball, Ken. Yes, we are involved in the Joe Cloud. We have 2 joint operational edge, started out as CIO pilots in this theater. One of them at our Fort Island data center, the other one that we're putting out in Yokota. And we're looking to expand that capability across the theater based on Indo-Pacific requirements that they've pretty clearly dictated to DISA. It started out as a CIO SOCOM pilot, and now it's growing legs across the theater. It's just another one of our J9 cloud offerings, and we have a J9 team present here as well this week if you have further questions. Yes, sir.
So Rob Brady with Expression Networks. The need for zero latency data that's accurate and available across the world, it's a problem. Within Indo-Pacific, what are some unique challenges with the space, given the geography, given the water, et cetera, that we need to understand as industry in order to really scratch the itch that you have?
Well, I think you hit in the question. It's the latency. And I wouldn't say it's zero latency. There's different weapon systems that have different tolerances for latency. But it's just a very different fight from what we've done the last 20 years. Last 20 years was a little slower, and it was in a very confined area. This is a much larger theater, and we're spreading out our C2 nodes. We're spreading it out just because of the distances, and we're spreading it out because large nodes get hit. Okay? So smaller, easier to set up. I mean, by smaller, I mean smaller kit, easier to operate, easier to connect in, as much bandwidth as we possibly can get. And so what we're doing with industry and that agnostic transport is, I know where we're going. I know where we're deploying to. And you don't need to have a security clearance to know that either. You can pull out a map, look at it, and go, okay, when you look back on that map there, these are key locations across the second island chain I think they care about. These are key locations in the first island chain I think they care about. You can figure it out. And then posturing ourselves appropriately before day one of that fight. So small kit, because we have fewer people operating them. They're not large nodes, like large C2 nodes like we had at the bases in Iraq and Afghanistan. They're going to be small outposts with a radar or a missile system or some type of observation area. So being able to take that data, and then some of the larger nodes where we have airfields and we're trying to move full motion video from unmanned systems back into CONUS, that's our problem set. And we're doing it while somebody's trying to interdict us. Someone's cutting cables, someone's jamming, someone's doing cyber attacks. So that's the problem. And we haven't dealt with that the last 20 years. We haven't dealt with a peer competitor who has that capability. We've had unimpeded comms to the point where we've gotten a little dependent on it, and we need to start worrying about how we function in a smaller bandwidth environment. Not every meeting has to have a secure video conference. You might need to, function with smaller data. Does that get after a little bit of what you're asking? Yeah. Okay. Thanks. Okay, I'll be around for a few minutes afterwards, and I'll tell you what, could my field office commanders that are here put your hands up? Okay, so Dan Smotis in the back from Alaska, Mags, Lieutenant Colonel Rios from Okinawa, Major Payne from Yokota in Japan, Ms. Park from Korea. Okay? So the team is here. If you have a very specific field office question or landmass question, they can help you out with it. If not, we have a lot of other leaders from DISA here as well that you can talk to. If you don't want to publicly ask a question, please hit us up and don't leave here wondering. Hit us up. Okay, thank you for your time. Appreciate it.